Hey everybody, what's going on? Dr. Chad Woolner here.
And Dr. Buddy Allen.
And this is episode 14 of the Health Fundamentals Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the surprising discovery regarding your anxiety. So let's get started. You're listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. I'm Dr. Chad Woolner.
And I'm Dr. Buddy Allen. And this show is about giving you the simple but powerful cutting-edge tools you need to change your health and your life.
So sit back and enjoy the show as we show you the path to your best life down to a science. So hey everybody, on today's episode, we're going to be discussing something really interesting that a recent study showed regarding anxiety. Let's talk about it, Dr. Allen.
It's always surprising when we find these sometimes seems very simple and yet powerful. Right. And when you think about it and look at it, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And there's a lot of people. There is a tremendous number of people now that suffer from all types of different, to different severity levels of anxiety.
Right.
Or even panic disorders for that matter.
Right.
And so
it seems as though, and I don't think it's just my perception, I think the reality of it is we're noticing an increase of mental health problems.
Oh, you bet.
And it's one of those things, what's really interesting is when we see a lot of these health problems on the rise, the question that I think is on a lot of people's minds is it that the problem is increasing, or is it that our methods for detecting it are improving or increasing or enhancing? And I think in this situation with regard to mental health issues, and we're just going to put them all together in one kind of bucket, depression, anxiety, and a mixture of other issues as well. I don't think it's just because we're becoming better at detecting them.
No.
I think mental health issues are truly on the rise. And I think this is one of those subjects where it's multifactorial. To a very large degree, such that it's an extremely complicated subject to unpack. And this is one of the primary reasons why so many different approaches, so many singular therapy approaches have failed miserably. You look at antidepressants, and this isn't some rant just for the sake of ranting against medications, because I'm not entirely anti-medicine, but the jury is back, and what they've come to find is that antidepressants and anxiety medications don't work well. The research just shows loud and clear that they don't work well. Now, that being said, it's not intended to stigmatize a subject that is already loaded with a lot of stigma, but it's just to really, I think, illustrate this idea that one of the reasons why these therapies haven't been terribly effective is because it's this kind of monocausal approach, right? You've got this one single imbalance with this one single neurotransmitter, and so therefore we just need to rebalance that, and that's the secret, that's the thing. Or it's that you've had this, emotional breakdown because of this thing that happened in your past. So we just need to do some counseling, and that's it. Or it's just that you need more of this vitamin, so do that. That's it, And I think the truth of it is that I think there are a variety of different reasons and causes behind.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like anxiety.
We actually, my wife and I went to a seminar not long ago, and it was directed more towards young people and social media and the dangers of it. And a lot of what came out of there, as far as speaking to anxiety and to depression or these other mood type disorders, we have at our fingertips. We can see the entire world now, whereas before, people still had anxiety and issues that they dealt with, but it was in such a smaller scale.
Right.
And now we can see things on this mass scale, and we can see what, all these false narratives from people's lives that looks like they're so perfect. And then unfortunately, we compare ourselves to them. And so we kind of start this spiral of terrible things. And so like you said, there are people who have maybe chemical things going on in their body, whether it be hormonal changes. Who knows? There are things that can internally be causing us to feel anxious.
Oh, well, and that's what this research is going to show us. We're going to talk to that in just a minute. And we certainly don't want to downplay chemical imbalances, because that is a major driver behind it.
Sure.
But again, what we're simply, I think, trying to illustrate here, or trying to drive home, is that the answer is rarely, and I don't think it's just with mental issues, for most health challenges, there's rarely a magic bullet, if ever, right? It's understanding, honestly,
and there's no shortcuts either.
Right, no shortcuts, exactly. No magic bullets, no shortcuts. It really is getting back to those 5 fundamentals of health that we talk about, and pretty much every episode, one way or another, those 5 fundamentals come back up again. So it's this idea of understanding that it's got to come from the inside. There's nothing that we can take that's going to magically fix it, although we can certainly do certain things from the outside to assist us, for sure. Simplicity and consistency, being consistent with good habits of health, making sure things are functioning correctly, mechanically and chemically, and it's interesting too, because addressing the mechanical can oftentimes impact the chemical. You bet, absolutely. Making sure we are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in tune, and then fueling ourselves properly. The old adage of "you are what you eat" is true, right?
Very true.
So that being said, right, those are our 5 fundamentals of health. We've talked about them before. We're going to talk about them again, no doubt. What's this study all about? What is basically going on here from what the study says regarding anxiety?
So researchers basically reviewed and went over 21 different studies with people with anxiety issues, over 1,500 people involved in these studies. And basically, they looked at basically the health of people's gut, the microbiome. Okay, so they divided these different studies into different treatment parameters, and many of them use just basically supplementing probiotics. So trying to restore a healthier gut flora, a healthier gut bacteria, so you're processing food more correctly. And basically the results just said that over 52% of the studies showed that the approach was effective. All right, it was beneficial for them to help heal that gut. And we've talked in prior episodes, and I think, and like you said, in future episodes, I'm sure this will come up again.
Yeah.
But it's these simple things, having a good, healthy baseline as far as your nutrition, as far as activity and exercise. It's like all of those. That you have to have that to be able to build upon it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a good example would be like, look, I think everyone has a desire to be healthy, right? And maybe even be a little healthier than they are now. The problem is I can't be 100 pounds overweight or 200 pounds overweight and say, I want to go run a marathon in a month.
Right.
All right. I have to get to a certain baseline before I can build upon that, or I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to do some other damage, right?
I would say one of the most profound things that I've learned in practice over the years, and it's taken a while to learn this, is to help patients set, and myself for that matter, set correct expectations when patients come in, because one of the things that we often find at our clinic is we're not an emergency room, and we're not even an urgent care clinic. And so we find oftentimes patients will fall into this kind of gap category where they're not quite to the level that they need to go to the ER. Their back or their neck is hurting them so bad, but they're not quite to the 911 yet.
Yep.
They're close, right? And then they're not going to go to the urgent care clinic, so they come into our clinic. And I remember the first few times that this happened to me, seeing this, especially as a new doctor, recent graduate, it's scary, it's frightening. You don't know what to do, and you're just like, holy cow, what do I even do here? And since then, I've had, over a decade of nearly 2 decades of clinical experience. And one of the things that clinical experience has helped me to understand is that when people come in and they're severely unhealthy, whether it be a chronic problem that's been going on for long, or it's really super acute, meaning their back is just bad, or their neck is bad, or whatever the issue may be, helping them understand and set the right expectations. And that can be challenging for sure, especially when people are like, I need to be fixed right now. My back is killing me. But they've got to understand, that our first priority is not necessarily to get you out the door 100% today. Our first priority is just to take the edge off of things at the beginning, and just set reasonable expectations with them. And when we do that, I think it helps set the stage for a longer-term greater outcome.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and just again, ratcheting back a little bit, we're taking it back to more simplistic way of looking at things, and coming back to what our topic here is, man, if we can help our guts be healthier, that will affect every aspect of our lives, because to have a healthy gut means you have to continue to eat a healthy diet.
Right.
Our culture is surrounded by terrible food choices. All right. There's fast food and there's processed food and there's garbage food that are high caloric intake, but virtually devoid of any kind of nutritional value.
Eating a diet that what we call the SAD diet, the standard American diet, is a constant assault on your gut. And so it's no wonder that so many people have so many, not only gut issues, but oftentimes not necessarily a correlated mental health issue that's either the primary driver behind or a huge factor of it, right? And so getting a healthy gut is one very simple but very powerful step in the right direction to helping people with things like anxiety and or other common health issues. So we talk about probiotics, okay? Maybe let's dive in a little bit deeper in terms of probiotics and maybe foods that already naturally have probiotics in them. What would you recommend?
Honestly, if you're going to attack it with a diet, there are some fantastic... any kind of fermented food is going to be wonderful. So things like there's pickles that are fermented, there's sauerkraut, there are kefir type yogurt drinks that are delicious. And I mean, honestly, they're wonderful. Some yogurts are better than others, obviously. We don't want them to be laden with sugar. But some good healthy yogurts. Oh gosh, and I know there's loads more. But anything that's fermented is going to have loads of good bacteria in there for you. And again, it's also good to understand there's tons of different strains of bacteria. Some are bad, some are good. But generally, if you're, some of those options we were sharing are going to be wonderful for you. Just kind of keep your gut healthy.
And my, I'm not going to recommend a specific brand of probiotic per se. But what I would simply say is you don't want to go getting a probiotic at Walmart or Target and think that you're going to get a really potent, powerful. The thing that I would say is talk to your healthcare practitioner, get their recommendation. If they don't recommend probiotics, I wouldn't take that advice, right? If they tell you that probiotics are no good or anything like that, I wouldn't trust that type of advice.
There's a few things to really keep in mind. If you have had any kind of recent infections where you've been given antibiotics, all right, those whenever or if ever you have prescriptions or courses of antibiotics that you have to go through, or even terrible gut flus, things like that, where your system is really thrown off. And you don't need to take these indefinitely, all right? Obviously, if you eat them regularly in your diet, great. But to do a course of probiotics for a month, 2 months is generally going to be pretty good.
Well, and I think that's a great point that you bring up, Dr. Allen, and let's kind of talk about that for just a second, is a lot of people have either gut issues and or mental issues that stem from originally some sort of a bad bug that they got where they used some sort of a really potent antibiotic. And the problem with antibiotics is that they're oftentimes very indiscriminate, meaning they just go in and they kill the good and the bad alike. They just go through and they wipe it out. And so the problem is that, number one, that can create it can create inflammation and all sorts of problems on the system. But one of the other big problems is that it can lead to opportunistic infection moving forward. Is that the healthy gut flora, your healthy gut bacteria, is designed to kind of help keep the gut in check, right? It's kind of this natural competition that happens there in terms of making sure that the bad stuff stays at bay because the good stuff is out competing it more or less. Is the, again, oversimplistic way of looking at it, but that's really what happens in terms of making sure we have normal, healthy, a healthy, diverse gut biome or environment for the healthy gut bacteria. What's the difference for people that are listening here between prebiotics and probiotics? Because they're not the same thing.
No, prebiotics are kind of like the fuel for probiotics. They kind of help set the stage so the bacteria can thrive.
Yeah. Eating foods that have that are naturally high in fiber are almost always going to be a great prebiotic for probiotics. So think about it this way. Certain foods, and I think, again, this should come across as fairly intuitive, but maybe it isn't. So let's talk about it for just a second. Certain foods sitting in the gut for a prolonged period, I don't want to say a prolonged period, we'll say a period of a time, can be very beneficial for them being in that environment. Other foods sitting in the gut for a long period of time can just create problems, inflammation, right? So let's talk to a hamburger sitting in the gut, meat sitting in the gut for a period of time, let's say, is going to create inflammation. We just know that it's going to, right? Versus broccoli, let's say, there's cruciferous vegetables, they're fibrous, right? Getting that into your gut, it's going to your body is not going to fully digest all of that.
Sure.
And so there's going to be elements of that is going to sit in your gut. And again, that's going to act like a prebiotic to where it's going to fuel or provide, food, if you will, for the probiotic species to thrive, right? So that's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic. So getting kind of back on point here, people who are struggling with anxiety, what's the take home here for them that you would say?
Take home, honestly, is start taking a little closer look at what you're eating. Yeah. Because, and again, if I have had bouts where I've been on antibiotics, and really, if it's been a long time and it's one of those things that it's not going to hurt you to do it, even if you haven't had one of those things, do a spell for a month.
Yeah.
All right. See how that changes, or maybe 2 months, give it enough time for your body to change, to build those, that biome up in your gut. But ultimately it's, let's get your gut healthier, because what if you didn't need to take any other nasty or more potent medications, and you could just with improving your diet a little bit?
Or what if just improving your diet made a significant impact on reducing your anxiety, right?
Absolutely.
Simple thing to do. The thing that I would also add as well is that you may not necessarily have any gut symptoms. It may just purely be, it's been shocking to me and somewhat surprising how many patients we've found have had gut infections where their only symptom was either depression or anxiety. That was the only symptom. No gut issues at all, or so they thought, right? And yet you test and you come to find, no, you've actually got a bacterial infection, or you've got a parasitic infection, or you've got some type of, bad bug in your system. And so that's a really, really important concept, important truth that patients need to understand, is gut health can impact so many areas, and especially from these studies here, if you're dealing with anxiety, there's a very, very high probability. In fact, the thing we can say from this study, 52%, more often than not, the gut is going to be involved.
Sure.
So restoring that normal, healthy gut flora is going to be critical as part of the overall management strategy. So if you're somebody who's struggling with anxiety, if you know somebody who struggles with anxiety, one simple thing that you can start doing immediately is cleaning up your gut health, watching what you eat, reducing the amount of inflammatory foods you eat, increasing the amount of probiotic foods, rich foods you get, prebiotic food that you put in your diet. Anything else that you'd add into that?
Nope. And just give yourself time. If you're doing the right things, remember always giving it enough time to actually make the difference. Don't just try it for a few days and be like, oh, it didn't work.
Or even a week or two.
Yeah. Give it time. Give your body time. But you'll be surprised just about, in fact, I would probably say just about all of any kind of condition you might have would improve by improving your diet.
Absolutely.
All right. So just keep that in mind. Give it time. And, and it's always best to go the more natural route. It just is.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope this has been valuable for you guys, and we will talk to you guys on the next episode. Have a good one.
day.
Thanks for listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so that you stay in the loop and in the know with all of the cutting-edge health information that we share. If you know other people that could benefit from this information, please share it with them as well. Also, be sure to give us a review. These really help us to ultimately help more people. Last but not least, if you have questions that you want answered live on the show, or if you have ideas for topics that you would like us to cover, please shoot us an email and let us know at info@thehealthfundamentals.com.